The concept of collective memory has been the guiding theme of this podcast. On this episode of Recollecting Carter, I asked Dr. Janice Hume to define collective memory and to explain the unique place that American presidents hold in it. As he approaches his 100th birthday, we discussed how Carter's long life has had a unique effect on our collective memory of him and how that memory might continue to evolve after his passing.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear. The time for racial discrimination is over. That I will faithfully execute
an undiminished, ever-expanding American dream.
the office of President of the United States.
Our commitment to human rights must be absolute.
And will, to the best of my ability,
It is a crisis of confidence.
preserve, protect, and defend
The struggle for human rights overrides all differences of color or nation or language.
the Constitution of the United States.
War may sometimes be a necessary evil, but no matter how necessary, it is always evil, never a good.
So help me God.
This is Janice Hume. I am a professor at the University of Georgia's College of Journalism and Mass Communication, and I hold the Carolyn McKenzie and Don E. Carter Chair in Journalism Excellence.
And that Carter is related to President Carter, is that right?
They were cousins, and Don Carter was a media executive in Knight Ridder back in the day, and I think first cousin to Jimmy Carter.
You are an expert in what historians call collective memory. Let's start by talking just about what that is, and then we'll think a little bit more about how that relates to President Carter.
Sure. So collective memory is the way we think about the past as a society. And it's very interesting because collective memory really is more about the needs of the present, sometimes than actually what happened in the past. It's a way a culture or a society or a community or a business remembers its past, but always keeping in mind that memory really kind of serves our current needs.
And so with that, we can remember celebrities, we can remember someone that was just famous by circumstance or a news event. What's unique about the memory of political figures? And in this context, especially with something like American presidents.
Political figures get a lot of press coverage. They have a lot of stories told about them. But even our earliest political figures, there's something about the presidency that solidifies your place in American collective memory. And so when I'm talking about how memory serves the needs of the present, think about George Washington. In the early days of our country, people really put him up on a pedestal. I mean, you see paintings of George Washington with the angels. George Washington was somebody that we could never aspire to become. But then as our country became more egalitarian, we believe that people are equal, right? And so the memories of George Washington became more egalitarian. So he became a person with flaws. He became a person that we admire, but who is now out of the reach of someone like me becoming. The memory of George Washington changed when we get to the turn of the century and the Industrial Revolution. We remember his entrepreneurial spirit. George Washington, long dead and buried, hasn't changed, but the way we remember him changed just because our interest and needs are different. So presidents are uniquely visible in our culture, and historians write about presidents, and we tell stories about presidents, and they have records that are nuanced, and there's public criticism of a president. How is that remembered 50 years after that president is gone? So presidents are unique. They hold a special place in our collective memory, and that memory morphs and changes.
Some of the presidents that have had big shifts in memory over time, Washington would certainly be one, Lincoln would be one. Your historical expertise is primarily in the colonial era and in the 1800s, but you have your own personal memory of Carter's presidency. Let's talk a little bit about how he was covered in the press at the time, how contemporary collective memory memorialized him, and then how you've seen it change over the years.
The first time I ever voted in a presidential election was his second bid for the presidency, the one that he lost. So I was a kid. His first term was at the end of my high school days and the beginning of my college days. What I remember was the Iranian hostage crisis, which is sort of what everybody remembers about Jimmy Carter. The big things of his presidency, I have vague memories of being aware of and understanding, like Camp David and the Panama Canal, various things that he is remembered for in his presidency. I do remember. The question is, do I remember them because I was focused in at the time, or do I remember them because that's what we remember about his presidency? And those two things are really hard to separate. My memory of Jimmy Carter visually during his presidency are those big caricatures with his big grin, the peanut farmer. And those visuals are very different from the way I think of Jimmy Carter now. The visuals I have of him now in my psyche are him building houses for Habitat when he's, an elderly person, or him having pictures made with people outside his church after he's taught Sunday school. Those are the images that I think of now with Carter.
With Carter, we've got a really unique setup for a shift in collective memory. The announcement was made over President's Day weekend in February 2023 that he had been released to home hospice care. It was covered widely in the news that weekend. And then there have been sporadic packages about different things. There was a bombshell story in the New York Times about the Iranian hostage crisis. How might those things affect our collective memory of Carter?
I think it's so interesting, and it's just a sign of our times in terms of this announcement of hospice care in this period of time that people can pay tribute to him while he's still alive and can fully understand what people are saying about him. I think that's a really 21st century phenomenon in terms of medical care, but also in terms of our media coverage. We have a moment when a president is still alive. It's almost like attending your own funeral. People are pouring out their sort of respect and their memories of Carter. And like most obituaries, they're very positive. Usually that happens after someone's gone, but now it's happening in this period of time that he is under hospice care, still with his family, still with us. This outpouring of tribute and memory is very, I think, unique. And I think it has to do with the fact that we can die at home now with hospice care, that they announced it so that people could process. He lives there in this little tiny town in Georgia, and I think it was a kindness to them to announce it so that people could process what his death will mean.
Recollecting Carter is produced by me, Jason Lee Guthrie, with support from Georgia Humanities and the Liebner Cooper Family Foundation. Original music and sound design by Joel Corey. Logo design by Whitney Matheson. Archival media provided by the Carter Center. Special thanks to my intern Michael Smith and my students at Clayton State University who have contributed to this podcast. You can connect with the show online at recollectingcarter.com.